All right, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to Pat Doherty from Wellington Water. Just a note before we begin, and I'll leave it to Pat to introduce his team. To note, we're still live streamed and public, and just to note for councillors, as information has come through quite late this afternoon, we're going to maybe organise a session with our team because they haven't had a chance to analyse the information that's come through from Wellington Water. So we'll be looking to organise something early next week before we need to make any decisions. So over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And look, I'm sorry for the late arrival of the information. It's been an interesting learning curve watching this organisation have to grapple with 6 annual plans or long-term plans and try and turn around information. And I'll talk about some of the challenges the organisation faces. So with me, I've got Pete Wells and Steve Hutchison, who will answer all the questions, and I will just stay on the helicopter and talk about the big picture stuff. So first of all, I just want to give a little bit about my background. So I started in local government as a Three Waters engineer, and eventually did an MBA, then moved to be CE of the Kapiti Coast for 10 years, then CE of the Nelson City Council for 5 years. And I stopped at the end of 22 and thought that was the end of my chief executive roles, but here I am, living the dream. I always wanted to be chief executive of a Three Waters company. Bit late, but I'm having fun. I'm really enjoying it and hoping to make a difference. The other thing is I'm not applying for any role in the new Water Co. So I have no skin in that game. I'm simply here to help fill the gap with this version of Wellington Water Limited. So the first thing I want to talk about was the state of our assets, and I want to just talk about that from a regional point of view. So we, first of all, thank you for your investment in leak repairs. That's made a huge difference, and we're having one of the best summers we've had in a very long time, and touch wood, long may it rain, long may it continue. So we look after 6,100 kilometres of water and wastewater mains on behalf of the region. Last year, we relayed 24 kilometres of mains, which meant we are aiming for an average replacement age of 250 years. This year, we're hoping to relay 9 kilometres of mains, which means we're aiming for a replacement age of 670 years, an average replacement age of 670 years for our pipes. So is it any wonder that they fail and they leak? And in case there's any doubt about that, when I started, they gave me a Wellington Water phone, excellent, and I received notifications of any major breaks. And it seemed to be buzzing every day or two with a major break. So this is a geyser, a crater in the road. It's not just a leak being reported. So after 7 weeks of that, I asked, how many have we had? And in my first 7 weeks, we had 27 major breaks. And of course, people in Wellington in the Wellington region think that's normal because we've got into that position so slowly. But I can assure you as a water engineer, it's not. That is very bad and a symptom of a very, very old network. Now, the depressing thing is that, bear with me, if the money tap got turned on today, to ramp up from 9 or 10 kilometres a year to a break-even point of 80 kilometres a year, and we ramp up by 30% a year because that's about as fast as we can move, it'll take us 5 years to get to a point where we are now replacing mains at the same rate that they're ageing. And assuming we then continue to ramp up to about 110 kilometres per year of replacement, it'll take us 6 years to get back to where we are today. But of course, the money tap's not going to turn on today. It won't turn on for roughly another 2 years if reform happens, and that'll take us another 2 years to get back. So today is the best day this network's going to have for 15 years. So if I can just say, please hurry with reform. It is urgent. Look, I've worked in local government for 36 years. and I watch the environment you're in today, and it's hard. And I understand that you cannot afford, with current rating systems, to meet these bills. But it is important this new organisation does get set up, can borrow the money, can invoice its customers directly, and start tackling this backlog. Because the sooner we start, the sooner something changes. So the next things I wanted to talk about was top priorities for improvements to Wellington Water Limited. So my impressions once I started was a lot of hard-working, very committed people constrained by poor structure, poor systems, poor processes. And my focus is to improve the performance and capability of the organisation so that it's not an impediment to the establishment of a new entity. So the first thing I just want to talk about is structure. So you may be aware that we are just about to drop a new structure into place next week. You'll appreciate that I've lived and breathed three waters just about my entire life, and I arrive at Wellington Water, and for the life of me, I cannot understand the structure. And when I ask about it, it was set up so that no one group manager could make a decision about anything. It always required 2 or 3 group managers to be in a room to achieve consensus. And of course, that was fine when there was only 150 people working for Wellington Water, but now there's 400. So you're trying to arrange a meeting with 2 or 3 GMs plus a manager each. Takes 2 or 3 weeks to get that all on the calendar. They have a meeting, and if they don't reach complete consensus, they try and have another meeting. And if that doesn't achieve consensus, it would come to the senior leadership team, which met once a fortnight, and it would go all day. It doesn't anymore. So the structure is not dramatic. It's simply just a conventional management structure with all the issues reporting to a GM who can make decisions. Also implementing a chief operating officer to improve the coordination between our capital projects, our treatment plant management, and our network operations, because they do a lot of overlapping work. They all deliver capital works, and those sorts of things don't need to come to the senior leadership table to be resolved. So we're advertising for a chief operating officer at the moment. The next thing, and look, I expect that I will get a 15, 20% improvement in productivity through that change alone. I mean, I have a 2 A3-page list of internal committees and groups that meet on a regular basis to try and resolve issues that should just be going to the chief operating officer's table. So I am expecting a lift in performance. I also want to talk about value for money. The systems that were set up well over 5 years ago haven't been refreshed, and as the OPEX and CAPEX budgets and size of the organisation has grown, they should have been, and they haven't. We've had too much focus on growing delivery capacity and a reliance on trust and relationships with our contractors and consultants. I have a different philosophy. I believe that there should be a commercial tension. You won't see a press release from me talking about contractor family and consulting family. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing better than a good working relationship with a maintenance contractor who's making enough money so that they can do a good job and meet the ups and downs of the contract. But we have a tension there so that we're comfortable with what we're paying them, that we're sure we're getting value for money, and we've lost sight of that. We're too reliant on our consultants and contractors. And look, I need to acknowledge that Wellington City Council has been telling us that. Many of the councils have been telling us that, and you were right. And I'm sorry it's taken so long for the message to be heard. But when I was talking with the board about taking on this role, it's one of the things that we, the board members and myself, agreed had to be a priority, was restoring trust with the councils and starting to deliver value for money. We're too reliant on our consultants and contractors, and so at the moment we're in the process of replacing about 30 permanent consultants and contractors that work for us with in-house staff. We think that we'll get much better continuity of knowledge and experience, and we'll get better value for money. We're also looking to recruit another 10 roles to strengthen our procurement, contract management, and our asset management areas, and we expect we'll get better value for money out of that as well. So we've commissioned a cost audit of the work that we do. It includes a comparison between our shareholding councils and other councils from outside the region, similar-sized councils from outside the region. We expect to report that to our board in the, I think it's 20th of February, and we'll be presenting that to the Wellington Water Committee in March. But we haven't waited to see what the results of that are. We're already making changes to our contractors and consulting panels. We're looking to break up those panels and increase the commercial tension by adding, seeking competitive bids for more of the work. That's going to slow us down a little bit. We probably aren't going to deliver all of our capital budgets this year, but we think that's where our focus should be. And you'll appreciate for some of our staff, that's a big change in direction. About instead of getting the money out the door, it's about driving that value for money. We're also talking with Fulton Hogan about the alliance we have at the moment. We're introducing KPIs that talk about value for money and a new performance framework. And as part of this restructure, we're also bringing some of our core engineering and operational teams back from the alliance and into Wellington Water so that we have a better understanding. We've lost that ability to be a smart purchaser, and we need to get that back because sometimes value for money is about good designs and not just not necessarily the lowest price. And look, the conversations we've been having with Fulton Hogan and with the contractor and consultancy panels have been very supportive. They're very positive about these changes, and they're working well with us. So that's encouraging, and that's a piece of work that's ongoing. Yeah, I'll leave it there in terms of value for money. The last thing I want to talk about was our IT systems. So we don't have an asset management system. We're the second largest manager of infrastructure assets in New Zealand, and we don't have an asset management system. We rely on Fulton Hogan, they've got one, and Veolia has one, and so they hold our data, and we have licenses to use their systems. So you'll appreciate that when I'm having trying to introduce tension into relationships, I can't afford to introduce too much tension into the relationship. So there's a fine line there, but we've never had an asset management system. We don't have our own finance system or budgeting system. I mean, when I left the Nelson City Council, if one of the engineers signed off on a bill, it was assigned against an asset. It went through the finance system and the costs got loaded against that asset. And the next day they could see the maintenance history of that asset. We can't do that. And the frustrating thing is most of my staff have come from environments where they had that sort of system and they haven't got it now. As I said, no finance or budgeting system, and that was one of the factors that directly contributed to the budgeting system error. We operate off spreadsheets, some very large, some very small, but a series of spreadsheets, and some of them are old spreadsheets, and the number of people who still understand how they work is getting less. So that's a challenge for us. Even pulling together the numbers for today's for this meeting has been a challenge. That's the reason we got those numbers late, is because it's taken a lot of time by some hard-working people to get that information out of our system in a way that we could present it. And I've tried to keep it high level and simple for you today so that you don't get buried in the detail. Our records management system and our records management document management system is end of life. I think support gets withdrawn in 26. We can't afford to have that fail. Our project management system is too small. It was good for a budget of maybe $50,000 to $90,000. We're spending, $330, $350 million a year, not $1,000 a year. It is also end of life. Support gets withdrawn in 26, so we need to replace that. Our health and safety system needs replacing, and we don't have a CRM system. We don't have any way of having a relationship with our customers. Luckily, at the moment, we've only got 6, but this is all going to change with a new organisation. So we need $37.5 million to upgrade those systems over the next 3 years. Realistically, we won't get much benefit from those systems, but the new organisation will, and will be able to hit the ground running. So we've been working with the AOG Water Reform team about that investment and their support of what we're doing. In fact, we were told that if we were told no, let them know, because they would have to add their money into their budgets. But we figured we can get a year or two down the track, and which means the new organisation can hit the ground running a lot sooner. So at this stage, the Regional Council have agreed to consider that as a loan in their annual plan, with the intention that the debt cost servicing, the interest cost alone, would be charged to the shareholding councils through the bulk water levy, and then the assets and the debt would transfer to the new company. But the idea is that CIO from each council will be on a steering group to make sure that we are delivering value for money, and obviously there'll be someone from the transition team as well to make sure that what we are doing is a no regrets investment for the future. So I'll turn now to the operating budgets. So I'm not going to read you everything that's on this list. We proposed as part of the LTP process that we needed $66 million for operating budget in your previous long-term plan. That got trimmed down to just over $60 million. That's not sufficient for us to keep on with what we're doing. So I think initially we had stage 1 advice that indicated we needed $69 million. We've had a hard look at that, and we can pull that down to $66.2 million. Some of that we need to make sure that we stay on top of leaks. We don't want to lose the hard-won ground that we've gained. One of the things that I failed to point out when I was talking about the states of the assets. So our water mains, when they fail, the good thing is that it comes to the surface. Most of the time, there's a leak comes to the surface, and we know it's there, and we go and fix it. Our wastewater assets, the length of wastewater assets is, I think, slightly longer than our water supply assets. And of course, when they fail, nothing comes to the surface. We just get a crack in the pipe. We either then get infiltration into the pipe, or we get roots into the pipe that block it. And so our dry weather blockages and overflows steadily increases. And so just like we're having to spend more and more money, reactive money keeping the water network going, we're having to do the same with the wastewater network. So that's that second line, that WW, that's not Wellington Water, that's wastewater reactive maintenance. Stormwater, SW, clean the Harris Street siphon. It's a stormwater line, but there was a direct connection into it, and it's been contaminated. There's a very large grit trap in there that's full of undesirable material, and every time there's heavy rain, that gets washed into the harbour. We'd very much like to clean that out, but it's got an expensive price tag with it. So that's our operating budgets, and Pete and Steve can answer any more detailed questions about it. But if I just move on to our capital budgets. So for the LTP, we recommended $89 million for this year, and we got 60.2, and that's definitely not enough. Our stage 1 advice was $75.3 million, and that difference between above the $60 million is driven by more money for reactive maintenance, reactive response to our leaking pipes. Why do we need capital? Because sometimes if we were replacing an asset, then that becomes a capital cost. And I think that, what's a split 80-20, 70-30?
Something like that.
depends on what, but if we dig up a valve and have to replace it, then that's quite an expensive asset that we have to put back in the ground. So we need more capital money as well. That can be a constraint on us fixing leaks. And then $12 million for the wastewater treatment plant program, effectively Moa Point. We need that money. That work, particularly the automation and controls, aeration system, well, none of that work can be deferred. These are old assets, and this is a mission critical asset, so it does need that attention. And then on top of that, there's some other funding that we think is important. But all I ask is that if you are going to trim those budgets, you trim from the bottom up. But please don't take out the Moa Point funding. We need that. And if those things fail, I promise you, you'll pay any amount of money to get it fixed quickly. So we've summarised our request on the last page. And the only thing in there that I haven't really touched in depth is one of our requests is an additional $430,000 to fund the extra 10 staff, your share of the extra 10 staff we need. So thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Pat, and thank you for your candour. I have to admit with some irony, I just received a text from my teenager to say our water's off at home. But I guess it's, it is confronting to feel that, the resources that we've put in, in terms of an operational review and into the, assessment of assets, that, to not see them, the resources that we've already put in appear and to have made the difference that we had hoped they would in terms of the organisation. So we'll move to questions. Deputy Mayor Fung.
I was a bit overwhelmed by the last two slides, but thank you, Pat. Thank you for your upfrontedness about the state of the nation at Wellington Water. It does help. I guess my question was around an earlier discussion around working with the government on procurement and working with the government on broader outcomes. I can appreciate that after all this you've given us, that may not be a priority, but is there opportunity within this in-house development to increase better outcomes for communities through employment programs that the government had been waving the flag about prior to Christmas?
A lot of the work we do is quite skilled work. My hope is when the new organisation is formed, that once you start getting a pipeline of work that's flowing through with guaranteed funding every year. At the moment, our cost per kilometre for relaying pipes is probably quite high. But if we were relaying 80 kilometres a year, then contractors will be encouraged to buy specialist technology and train up their staff better. But the year that we dropped from 24K to 9K, a couple of our contractors had to lay off staff.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think these are roles for inexperienced staff, but I think that by creating a pipeline of work, there will be more employment opportunities in the Wellington region. I mean, all the contractors we use, I think, are Wellington-based.
Good. So a long-term goal.
Yes,
Thank you.
This money is going to stay in the community, definitely. Yeah.
I have a question next, Pat, which is just about, there's a relatively light level of information that's been provided to us around this request, and is more information forthcoming to our team to help us to make these decisions?
Yes, sorry. There's been a draft of that information provided this afternoon, and it will be to give your officers visibility of that, and it'll get formalised tomorrow, a long memo to describe the detail of how that's been calculated and worked through. I understand that it's likely to be provided to you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you've described the challenging environment, but we have to make a decision next week. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, I have 2 rounds, if possible, please. So last year we replaced 2 kilometre of pipe. Reading from this presentation, this CapEx increase doesn't actually materially shift that dial. This is about other parts of the water network. Is that fair?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Look, we'd like to be replacing a whole lot more pipe, but we accept that the funding's tight, so we're trying to deal with the most critical assets. But the price for that is your operating costs are going to keep on going up every year until the region hits that 80 kilometres a year mark.
So I just want to thank you for the candour as well with your remarks today. Have we seen with the ramp up of leak repairs a decline in the average leak repair cost? Are we seeing some efficiencies now from actually scaling up that response in Wellington City?
I don't have the data at the moment, but I can go look for that.
Okay.
But one of the things to get them down quickly is they've done all the easy ones.
Yep.
So I expect that once we start dealing with the ones in the CBD under hot mix, brick paving and concrete, there are going to be some expensive repairs there as well.
Yep. In terms of repair costs, whether it's leak repairs or pipe replacement, do you know what proportion of the cost is going towards traffic management?
No, I don't, though I do know that it is something that we are also trying to reduce. I know that the Transport Agency is leading a charge as well in terms of simplifying traffic management.
I've got 2 more, but I'll go back. Thank you.
But can I say it's not as easy for us, if we have to dig up you get more economy of scale if you're relaying a whole road. You can close half the road and just leave the cones there, whereas we're setting up, closing a lane while we fix a leak, and then we're patching it, then we're off again. So traffic management costs, we don't get any economies of scale. It's not a good way to keep your pipes fixed, to keep on patching them. But yeah, I agree, traffic management costs are something that we're trying to drive down.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you for coming to us today. I guess my question was around, there were some conversations around changes that were going to be influenced throughout the organisation. My question is, what reporting mechanisms are available to us to kind of walk with you along that journey, understand how you're progressing alongside that, and whether, our aspirations are being met for the organisation?
So at the moment, my reporting mechanism would be to the Wellington Water Committee, where we will be talking about those things, and so that will be the intention at the moment. I'm reluctant to start offering more individual reporting to councils. Can I just say that one of the things that has been an eye-opener to me is the complete lack of economies of scale with this ownership model. We do 6 annual plans, I think, with 3 or 4 stages, which is just takes a large chunk of our staff out for nearly 6 months of the year. We provide monthly reports to each council. I think we only provide our board with a 3 monthly report. We manage 18 different funding buckets. Well, actually, it's 36 because there's 18 for operating, another 18 for capital. No ability to transfer money between them, not without extensive memos. The new model will be just so much better. There's some serious opportunities for economies that this model just does not have at all. Sorry, I digressed there.
That's all good. Thank you.
So, Councillor Pannett.
Questions. Just going, because you've been around a while like me, capacity when it transferred over to Wellington Water was apparently not the greatest of states. So there was a lot of work done to try and fix those issues. You're coming, everyone's different, obviously with different personnel, coming back and saying, well, it's still a mess. This new model will fix things. Is that really true, that if we keep fiddling around with the structure, that it will improve?
It's a step in the right direction. Now I've got a list 2 A4 pages long of things that I need to fix, and this is just the start. There's a whole lot more to do I have to say, having asset management systems and budgeting systems and finance systems will make a truckload of difference as well. But all I'm trying to do is get some of these serious flaws fixed so the new organisation can hit the ground running. And I think once it's got the ability to raise its own funding, and it only has to maintain 3 buckets of money, water, wastewater and stormwater, and has the ability to be a lot more flexible about how it pivots, that'll make a big difference. But if I was here for 3 or 4 years, I think, yeah, I can make this organisation hum a whole lot better than it is. Not even 3 or 4 years, 2 or 3 years, I can make it hum a whole lot better than it is at the moment. And that's not applying rocket science to it. That's just, I suppose, 15 years experience as a CE and knowing what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, for debate later. And the other question I just had was the, really, are you able to give reassurance to Wellingtonians that this enormous amount of money that obviously is needed is we're getting the best value for our buck? Because people, I think, kind of go, have you talked to the plumbers yet? What, like are we doing things in the most efficient way?
From this point on, yes, I'm determined that we're going to deliver value for money.
Last year?
Well, I only started in October, so I can't talk about what went on before, but well, I think I have actually talked on that we have lost focus on value for money, as I said, talking about growing the business and developing trusting relationships with our contractors and consultants. And I've met with them all and had these discussions about how things are changing, and they understand that. And I'm driving those changes hard. So already we're putting far more work out to competitive bid, and we're measuring the alliance on value for money. And I have further plans there, but I can't talk about those in a live stream meeting. But watch the space, more will be happening. But yeah, you'll certainly be getting better bangs for your bucks with this money. Does that mean that you can give me less money? I don't think so, but if that's what the next question was.
I do have a follow-up question to Councillor Pannett's, Pat, because in the 5 years that I've been on this council, really the only problem that's been articulated to us from Wellington Water is that Wellington City Council is not giving enough money. And you're sort of saying the same thing, however, you know, there's sort of all this organisational change that has to undertake. So we become very jaded about, yes, of course, nobody thinks that more money is not needed. However, it is not just more money that is needed. So how is this different from every other request when you're telling us the state of the organisation is so problematic?
So I think the fact that I'm coming along and saying that the state of the organisation is an issue shows that things are different, and I'm talking about how we are going to change things. But truth to tell, the amount of money that we're asking for from Wellington City Council is only a small fraction of what's needed to start tackling the issues. So and really all we're asking for is enough to keep the critical systems running. So what I am assuring you is that you will get better value for money. We are listening and doing our best to get back to being a trusted advisor, as I said, being a smart purchaser as well.
Councillor Randall.
Sorry, I suppose it is an unusual approach to come along and say, here's all our faults. But if I come along and said, no, there's nothing to see here, would that have gone better?
Good point.
I don't think so.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you very much for a very straightforward conversation. I guess that's what you get when you have an engineer as a CEO. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I am intrigued about your comment and your faith in that a new model will be more efficient than current Wellington Water, because I think that is the biggest single concern we have as a council, that we know we've got to spend more money, but we want to make sure it's going to be spent more effectively. So in terms, it's very unfair, but in terms of efficiency gain, there's more pipe per dollar. and putting your dirty laundry out there, a new entity will gain what sort of percentage increase you think in terms of bang for buck? I mean, you're talking 20%? Are you talking just 5%?
Oh,
I know it's very unfair, but I just wanted to see if I get your comment.
it will get better bangs for bucks, but that's going to be hard. That's going to be hard-won progress. I mean, the price to move from laying 9 kilometres a year to 100 kilometres a year that's where you start getting some economies of scale. You can say to a contractor, let's replace all the water and wastewater pipes in these 5 streets in the suburb. You don't have to shift for a year, just relay pipes here with your specialist equipment. Then you start getting some efficiencies. But this new organisation is going to have to develop the income stream. It'll probably take a year or two to hit the ground running as well. So what we're looking at the moment is the things that we can't afford to fail, like your wastewater treatment plant. You notice we're not asking for a whole lot more money for pipes. We are asking for some more money to keep patching them in the hope that the new organisation starts tackling that. So we will get more value for money. It won't be as good as a bigger organisation, but you can't afford to keep delaying. You'll get caught.
Yeah. I guess it's also got to highlight that the timing for your request is less than ideal, although it's not too late. Is there any particular reason why this information couldn't have been provided to before our December meeting? I know that you arrived in October, and that's probably the main reason. But yeah.
Well, there was some advice provided in December to council, and that was a request. It was still based on your long-term plan agreed funding levels. That advice was provided in December. It also identified a number of another 10 million or 12 million for other costs that we would recommend to add to it. So
we might just need you a little bit closer to the mic. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, so we have provided some formal written advice in December. I think it was the 4th of December that we provided that through to council. And that included a request for some increases in the next year and some additional recommendations, including those reactive costs that Pat's been talking about as well, to just keep the current things on. Since then, there has been some improved information has been made available about the wastewater treatment plant. As we work through and doing the design and going out and tendering, we've got some new cost information, and that has brought some costs forward and changed the timing of them to meet those critical compliance risks, and it's also increased some costs. So that's also a change since the December advice, which is now new information, which is in here as well.
Okay, thank you. And
sorry, can I just so the fluoride report talked about learned helplessness, and effectively that's Wellington Water staff saying, oh well, we've done the best we can, what more can we do? So my staff get indications of asked to stay within LTP budget range, which they did or tried to with the first round, but the board has made it very clear they want us to spell out the risks to each council so they understand what we think is the minimum that should be spent and the consequences of not spending it. So I think there's also a change in approach, which is taking some time to bed into the organisation, that if we're trusted advisors, then sometimes we deliver unpopular messages that you at least can then make an informed decision about whether to provide the funding or not.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I think other councillors do. My last question's around the IT systems. I notice you're not asking for any money for the $35 million worth of IT systems you say Wellington Water or any water entity needs. Yet next year you're going to lose some of those. I was wondering if you could maybe outline, is there a possibility that you will still need to get some funding to cover off, at least mitigate the key risks you have on end-of-life systems? Me having actually worked on projects that do exactly that.
So Greater Wellington Regional Council, we can't borrow money as an organisation, but Greater Wellington Regional Council have agreed to so it's a 3-year program. They've agreed to borrow the money for year 1 and treat that as an interest-only loan and recover those costs through the bulk water levy to each of the councils. So I think that money your share of that is already in some of the numbers you'll be seeing.
Oh, okay. So just in terms of the...
Sorry, Councillor, you've definitely had 3, so I've got 3 more on the list. Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Pat. Appreciate you coming in and giving us this information. Regarding resources to actually do this work, do we have the capability to actually do 80 kilometres a year in Wellington? Like, can these organisations that you're actually getting to do this work?
At the moment, no. So that's when I talked about it would take us 5 years to get up to 80 kilometres a year. Assuming we can ramp up at about 30% a year. So no, we don't think we do. Not to get competitive pricing at any rate. So you ramp it up and you ramp it up and until you hit your target. We may be able to go a little bit quicker. It would really depend on you'd have a market sounding, see who was out there and see what sort of capacity they had. You might be able to ramp up quicker, but our experience so far has been that ramping up our total capital budgets by about 30% a year was as much as we could reliably deliver. Because the other thing is you also need more contract managers, more site supervision, those sorts of things as well.
Yep, okay. And talking about that, we're talking about a lot of old pipes that need replaced. If we replace more, then of course we're going to reduce the amount of leaks that we're actually getting. So when you assess these pipes, where are the oldest pipes? Would they actually all be in the CBD? Because we keep hearing about this pipe in Arrow Street that keeps blowing geysers. So where are all the oldest pipes? Like, where would your focus be?
So I'll answer from a generic level. So there's probably a lot of cast iron pipes in the CBD that are probably getting very, very old, but they're much tougher. There's a lot of asbestos cement pipe in the network, and that doesn't cope well with earthquakes and is starting to get old as well. So it would really depend, I think, on the type of pipe and what it's made of. Do you have anything you wanted to throw into the mix there?
It's tough. We have a lot of pipes which are nominally past their replacement date by quite a, in the hundreds of kilometres of pipe which should already have been replaced. We don't have funding to replace 400 or 500 kilometres straight away. So we are picking what we see as the ones which are most risk of failure, and the consequences of failure are the highest. But it is at the moment it's a case of whack-a-mole that we're playing, and we need to get to a long-term ability to strategically plan that out, better understand the risks, where the failure risks are, and as Pat was saying, it's not necessarily the oldest ones. It's the type of material and the type of ground conditions that might drive our decision making in that area. But that's asset information that's hard to gather at the moment, and it's it's contract information. It's all of the things that are difficult for us to do.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And my last question is that some time ago, not so long ago, we were talking about the Plumbers Association were talking about getting some of their resources to come and actually help you fix the leak. So would it be still under consideration for plumbers, for you to contract plumbers in to come and fix the leaks, and your focus then would be on replacing pipes? Is that still a feasible option?
So the burning platform is no longer there. We're on top of the leaks. Our maintenance contractors are responding okay, and the contractors who do the maintenance work are different from the contractors who would do the replacement work. I mean, Fulton Hogan could bid for that work. They might win some of it, but it would be a different team. It wouldn't be the maintenance teams. But we are talking with the master plumbers about how we can work with them and get them more involved with private leaks, and having some discussions with them last week and this week about how we can do that, because we see I think at the moment we've nearly got we know about as many leaks on private property as there are on the public system, so they need to be fixed as well, and hooking up well qualified, experienced plumbers with house owners is one of the things we want to start doing.
Yeah, great. That's good. Can I go back on the list, please?
Yeah,
Thanks.
but
If there's time.
Councillor Free.
Thank you, Pat. And it is refreshing actually to have listened to you actually apologise for some of the things. some of the things that could have gone better. I've been looking at I do get your emails, and I've just got up the most recent one, and I look at them, but they're not terribly interesting to me because they're very fluffy. And I wonder, how are we meant to reassure ourselves? I did see you made the point about the private versus the public, and I was going to ask about that, but I got beaten to it. How can we be more reassured that you're making progress? And you mentioned a monthly report that comes to our organisation. What sort of information does that have? Does it tell us what you've spent our money on? That's what I want to know. I want to know what you're spending our money on.
It won't have what you're looking for in terms of where reform is what we are doing in terms of changes. Okay, I hear what you say, and we can start doing more of that in our emails.
I mean, I'm incredibly interested in Moa Point. It's in my ward. I look all the time to see what's happening with Moa Point. I never see any information about that. But more to the point, where do we find out what you fixed with our money? For Wellington City, where do we find that? What have you spent our money on? And because we can't answer this, it's really hard for us to feel confident about giving more money.
Yeah, so...
It's a normal question. If I were employing anyone for my own business, I'd want to know what have they done? What have they done for the money I gave them?
I can look at what we could provide easily, and it maybe we can provide some summaries of how many leaks we've repaired in each area.
Brilliant.
In those emails, yeah.
How many pipes have you laid, fixed? What's been going on with all these millions?
Look, a lot of it is not very sexy stuff. I mean, in terms of pipes laid, I mean, there's very little at all. It's a lot of it's patching leaks. A lot of it's replacing, working on pump stations, that type of thing. But look, we can have a talk about it. But what I don't want to do is add another cost to the organisation in terms of developing another reporting system that then, to be fair, I have to give it to 6 councils.
But you're giving a monthly report to our officers, so we can ask for that.
It's a finance report. Yeah.
A finance report, but does it say what the finances are paid for?
Not in detail, no, it won't do that.
Okay. Are there reports on the website that we can look at? Okay.
Can I also just note, Councillor Free, within the quarterly report that we produce each quarter, Wellington Water provide us with information, and it includes both the financial information for the quarter and the non-financial performance information as well. And so some of that information does talk about what has been spent and the change in the performance metrics. So you will get the papers tomorrow, but what it does note is there has been, while the targets have not been met, there has been significant improvement in the metrics that Wellington Water have been working towards over the last quarter. So that's one way in which we can help support you and give you that information by showing that financial and non-financial picture in the quarterly report, recognising the improvements that Pat has talked about that he's also making.
Thanks, Councillor. Sorry, I'll have to move on. I want to make sure that Councillor Calvert gets a chance to ask her questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question was, you mentioned 9 kilometres of pipe replaced. Can you just clarify which year? Was that the 23-24 year, or was that the 24 calendar year?
That's this year we're in, the 24-25 financial year. We're hoping to relay 9 kilometres of pipe.
Okay, all right.
The previous year we did 24 Ks.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that's region-wide, of course. That's not
region-wide. Oh, so that's not just Wellington City?
No. That's for the whole region.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I talked about, 6,100 kilometres of pipe that we look after for the region, and we relayed 24 kilometres 2 years ago, and this year we're hoping to relay 9.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's any comfort, we put in about 24 kilometres of cycleways. But anyway, so couldn't resist that one. So I want to ask about Golden Mile and Thorndon Quay, because you just touched on the risk issue around pipes, and it's not necessarily how old they are, but it's what they're made of. is, regardless of our projects, is the Golden Mile and Thorndon Quay, are those pipes identified in the high risk, in your highest risk ones? And I ask that question because I know that I think we put in about $24 million for replacement of pipe work on the Golden Mile. I think you originally said $30 million a year ago that would cost, but they weren't they weren't included in the highest risk ones for replacement. So I'm just trying to understand, are we replacing pipes in an area that actually aren't given in the highest risk category?
Sorry, in respect to the Golden Mile, there is an amount of money that has been put in the plan over the 3-year period to cover some pipes that would be in the way of the works, addressed as part of the works. At that moment, that money has not been tagged to specific pipes or specific risks. Once the design is finalised, then we can look at where the pipes intersect with that. I think there is some prior work on relative priorities, but I haven't reviewed that. It's of the order of about $6 million. I need to confirm that. It is in the advice pack that's coming tomorrow. I haven't got that number to hand. I've only got a 1-year figure at the moment in front of me, so that's not that helpful. And then in terms of in terms of relative urgency of places like 8.6 million is what's been it's under wastewater, yeah. So but that's not necessarily strictly wastewater. That's for all pipe assets. It's just tagged that way, just until we determine what the mix of pipes is that would be addressed as part of that work. So there's money reserved for Golden Mile. In terms of places like Thorndon Quay, we haven't. There are a number of pipes in there that, if there was funding, you might look at, but you'd have to consider them against the rest of the city too. And we haven't done that because we haven't had the funding to look at that kind of question. So while there are old pipes, while there are at-risk pipes, and we have got criticality frameworks that address that now, that's one of the things that we've achieved, I couldn't tell you what's the most important pipe to do right now.
Thank you. There was just one more question. That's the $8 million for Golden Mile. My understanding is I would be interested to understand, and that might come tomorrow, if with any other money tagged for pipes for the Golden Mile in your budgets for the next 3 years.
No, that's the...
So just 8 million?
8.6 million over the 3-year period.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go just to one more question from councillors who wanted another go. So one from you, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, my understanding of the current management structures, Fulton Hogan's alliance manager also sits on the board of Wellington Water with introducing some more commercial tension. Have you looked at that arrangement?
So the alliance manager sat on the SLT, but no, that doesn't happen anymore. No.
One from you, Councillor Randall.
Yes, I was just wondering, in terms of your proposed investment in IT systems, the assumption is that they will be taken over by the new entity. So how are you going to ensure that they are fit for purpose for the new entity as well as to meet your own needs?
So we've been talking with the transition team right from the start of this proposal and ran it by them and didn't even pitch it to our board until we had their blessing, their support, and they will have a member, a person on one of the oversight groups to make sure that it is delivering, that it is a no regrets investment, that it is fit for purpose for the new organisation. As I said, that they made it clear that if we got the money declined, then they would add it into the reform costs establishment costs for the new organisation.
Councillor Chung, one for you.
Great, thank you. Water meters. Can you tell me what percentage of leaks do you estimate would be on private property and how many would be in the network?
At the moment, we've got as many leaks on private property as we have on the network, but that won't be them all. It's amazing as you put in a meter and how quickly they detect small leaks, etc. I mean, the experience is that water meters with volumetric charging will reduce your peak water use by 25%. That's what happened on the Kapiti Coast. That's what happened in Nelson City, the two places that I've been involved with introducing water meters. And of course, it's peak usage that counts, because that's what you size your reservoirs, your trunk mains, and your pumps for, and your treatment plants. So the more you can pull that down, the better off you are, and the less you have to invest in the rest of your assets.
Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, it was back to the efficiency question, and you stated that there was going to be increased efficiency with the organisational changes, with additional efficiencies to come in the regional model. And then there was that additional statement that anything that we didn't enter into our budgets now would then just be entered into the long-term budget for the regional model. So I was wondering what considerations were given to the relative efficiencies that present themselves down the line compared to the spend now when evaluating the budgets.
So you notice we didn't come along and ask for funding to relay 10 kilometres of ageing water pipe. We've asked for money to keep critical assets going for one more year, and with a message to please hurry with the new organisation. So I think that's all I can say.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, we were criticised by the auditor for not having better asset information and relying on the age of the pipes to determine when to replace them. What would it take to get better asset information so you have more certainty about what pipes are a priority?
So I think that was slightly before my time. I thought the criticism was we didn't have asset management plans, and we've actually commissioned those, and they're just at the point, I think, of being checked. Before we hand those over to the transition entity as well, so that they can use them as a basis for planning. So, and I don't think we talk about age as a default factor, but it's certainly not the only factor we use when we're replacing pipes, as Pete talked about. I mean, another thing is you look at the areas where they're consistently bursting and producing leaks. That's another thing that drives it, is your maintenance history. And as I talked about, we struggle to also get access to that sort of information. So having an asset management system that helps us collate this data and report it and interpret it in useful ways will be a whole lot better. So I think the asset management plans we've written at the moment will address one of the auditor's concerns, but investing in our own asset management systems will be the real great leap forward.
Do our staff get to see these asset management plans?
Oh yes, you will.
Okay,
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, I think that brings us to a close. Thank you, Pat and team. I think we all very much appreciated that session. Before we come to a complete close, I'm just going to pass over to our acting CEO, Andrea, just to give us a little bit of advice. As we said, we're going to have some more information and analysis of the information that's been presented to us next week, but just about the quantum and the kind of the difference that we might be looking at in terms of our decisions. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Team.
So just so you're aware, I can confirm, I think Councillor Randall, you asked about the funding of the IT assets, and we are reflecting the cost of that through the bulk water levy. So exactly as Pat had suspected, we are doing that. That has been advised by Greater Wellington. Pete referred to the phase 1 advice that we received. That information didn't factor in any increase in capital expenditure. We've only received that today. So it was a nil increase. It's now 25 million. So we haven't built that into any of the forecasts. The phase 1 advice that we'd received in November, in preparing the budgets, we'd incorporated $7 million to what, the information that you'll get, but it's now been revised down to 5. So that's why Raina just mentioned that there's things that will move around, because we've only just received this second phase of information. So we were advised a $7 million increase in OPEX, which was factored into the budget. This advice is quite different to that. So we'll bring that into the paper. We'll make sure you've got that for tomorrow's decision making. Oh, sorry, not for tomorrow, next week's decision making.
I'm going to bring the session to a close, but so I think you can have conversations as I'd like to thank you all for your patience this afternoon. It was good to get through so much business. Appreciate it.